Welcome to the Spiritual Geek Podcast, Wisdom for Modern Times, where we focus on living with intention to consciously create a life you love and celebrate. I'm your host, Sheila Franzen, and I'm so excited to share another episode with you. Today, Dheepa has joined me for a discussion about living on the edge of change. Dheepa is an intuitive guide, resonance alchemy healer, and facilitator. She advocates and teaches practices for embodying and reclaiming your sacred voice, creative expression, and leadership. Her prayer to be humble and in service to the Divine Mother feeds and informs her work for birthing a new life in the dawning of this new age. Dheepa shares her healing and empowerment journey using intuitive meditative processes, offering guidance and clarity for those seeking to know thyself and reclaim their personal power and leadership. Dheepa, welcome and thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you.
So is there anything else you'd like to share as part of your introduction?
You know, I was wondering about that. And as soon as you spoke the words Divine Mother, that's where I melt into. And it really feels that's the space that I am always calling into alignment with, how can I serve what Divine Mother is calling us to serve into? What is the invitation for us, the space to step into, so we actually can truly honor the path that we've been birthed to step into and offer our gifts. And so I think for me, my call to service has been an answer to that prayer, to be in service to the Divine Mother. And I think when I work with my clients, it is always, in a space that is created for that knowing to be reclaimed for each person as they step into this healing container. Yeah. Thanks for asking me that. I just felt so touched by that bio that I was just needed to speak a bit more into the Divine Mother.
Well, and I found myself when I read that line, I just dropped into the beautiful space and energy of that, right? The Divine Mother it's a concept that it seems simple and yet it's not. It's incredibly complex. It's beautiful. It creates this balance in the universe. And yeah, I love that you claim that, reconnection and birthing of that, because without the recognition of that balance of the Divine Mother with the Divine Father, we're not in balance in the universe, in our day-to-day lives, in our earthly existence. And I just love that you have declared that and that you work with that in the energy of everything that you do.
Yeah, thank you, Sheila. Yeah, I think, speaking to that balance, I think that is the crucial part of the journey, and I think the more we question and step into the invitation for balance to come back into our lives, it's we're talking about activating that mother aspect, the Divine Mother aspect, but equally, as you said, with the Divine Father.
So you had proposed this beautiful concept of living on the edge of change, and this facing the edge of the unknown every day. Like, tell me more about that. What does that mean for you? How does that show up in your life?
Well, first, I have to say, when I received your invitation to be on this podcast, and you had said, "Let's talk about something fun. Let's get into a fun conversation." This is the topic that just I've got to talk about this, living on the edge. and then of course, in typical fashion, I was like, "Oh my gosh! So what is that? What am I actually really speaking into?"
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's actually quite. It's actually a lot, well, I wouldn't say simpler, but it's actually what we can bring into everyday life. It's, if I was to frame the context of living on the edge, it tends to bring up ideas that we're living in a way that's all about taking risks and living dangerously. But it's not so much from a place of reckless abandonment. This is more an invitation to really explore our relationship to life and how we show up to it. So it's a really broad exploration to who we become when we're facing life, and the Christian being, or the nature of life being that life is full of uncertainty. There is no certainty in life. And so living on the edge then becomes this opportunity for us to choose. Are we going to live our lives, um, trying to create as much certainty, trying to control and create stability, and develop as much reliability that we can, and to control that? Or do we accept the uncertainty? We actually step into a space where we live with that uncertainty. We go with the flow of uncertainty. And there is a curiosity to allow that uncertainty to inform us. Does that make sense? Does that?
Yes, it does. I was just pondering all of the pieces and the tidbits of knowledge and wisdom in there. This aspect of embracing the uncertainty is, I think there's a, like, what I was almost seeing as you were talking about that was this way that you mentioned, even in your bio, the concept of the dawning of this new age, right? There's an energy shift that's happening on the planet, right? I think for a lot of people, it can feel like things are moving faster. Like even the astrological aspects and the planetary changes, like I don't get into the details, but occasionally I'll have somebody be like, yeah, there's all these planets doing all these things. And it's like, it just feels like there is, um, there is a quickening, a pace that's happening. And if you resist that versus allow it and accept that aspect of uncertainty of like, well, what's that mean? How are we really going to live different in this new age? What will it be like to live heart-centered and in balance with the divine mother? Um, that creates this different flow of energy, um and that can feel scary, I think, and overwhelming for a lot of people, because you kind of are like, yeah, things are changing. I feel things feel different, right? It is different. And yet it's that embracing what feels different and the choice to, even if it's not uncertainty, because that sometimes triggers people as well. But it's like being just willing to be fully present with the unknown, but also like in the present moment, everything is known. It only feels like it's not known, right? If you kind of play with these concepts of time, or or worry about the future, or worry about what's changing, if we come back to this moment, then how can we be in this moment? And then we allow and accept all that is moving ahead of us so fast.
Yeah, yeah, precisely. It's going back to what you said in the start around just the intensity of the times that we're in. The fact that the times that we're in is already amplifying the intensity. How do we still just show up in the moment, right? In the moment, and to be an allowance of that. And I think this is the opportunity, if we actually embraced living on the edge with change as a way to really explore moment to moment. How am I showing up to life right now? This is intense. This is my world is changing, in front of my eyes so rapidly. How do I even cope with this, right? How and as you point out, it is that resistance to that change that actually then causes pain. That's where we start to feel the fatigue of life, right?
Yeah, the moment we step into resistance, it's definitely fatiguing. As you were kind of sharing this aspect of coming back to the present moment, I was, over the years, working with different healers and energy workers, and just even in different classes, it's often come up that people have been like, Tai Chi would be really good for you. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be really good for me. And I've never done it, right? Like I've looked into it, but it's just never kind of been something I took the time to create, right? Or took the time to make happen. And I've done a couple of like try to do it on a cruise ship, right? When they're doing Tai Chi in the morning or something.
Right.
And I can never like follow it because it's really hard to step in and do something that you've never done.
Yeah.
So I went to a class yesterday and it was beautiful. I mean, I really enjoyed it. But I was distinctly aware of the pace at which I move through life because Tai Chi is so intentional. And for me, there was a part of it that felt so slow, right? Because I'm like,
Mm.
I'm always on the move. I'm always on the go. And there's a way that while I'm pretty grounded and I focus on being grounded and present, it was an awareness that was brought in for me, probably no accident given we're talking about this today, um, that I am often trying to move through life and not always as enjoying it and in that gratitude and on like being on the edge. It's almost like trying to. I'm being tongue tied right now.
Mhm.
I spend so much time creating change, right? Like creating, right? I always want to be about the aspect of creation and choice, and yet it's in this moment, like in the moment of Tai Chi yesterday, of the slowing down, and then even the rest of my day was different, right? And then there was a point where it actually, like, I think there was just an aspect of energy that had moved that I found myself almost irritable, right? Because it was like there was an opening that was created and I didn't quite know what to do with it in its own way. And so um yeah, slowing down and embracing this edge of things, right? Like not trying to go so fast you go past it either, right? So it's always about this aspect of balance.
Yeah, I so love that you bring in the this notion of slowing down and also almost, the sense of when you slow down, you enter into this huge void, a spaciousness that gets created, which creates even more stillness, right? And
Yes.
and when you're used to a faster pace, this can seem triggering for sure. Yet, this is the I think this is the crux, really. Coming to experience, and for everyone, it's going to be different. Everyone's going to have a different experience of that age, and when we tune into that space of stillness and spaciousness, oh my gosh, when I think of all the times of feeling rattled or stuck in worry or fear, it is in the moment of where I can actually find that stillness where the problems dissolve, right?
Mhm.
And so, what is it about that stillness that can seem um uncomfortable, like, why don't we want to embrace more stillness in our daily life? Why can't that be a component of living on the edge, right, where we actually allow that stillness to be part of how we respond to life? And I think this when we I had this I don't know whether this is it's interesting. I recently had this dream, and it was an interesting dream. I was holding on to what seemed like an anchor, right? And I was just holding it in my hand, and then I fling it just by accident, and it falls, and I mean it flies and falls into the ocean, and it goes deep, 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 deep down into the ocean, and I'm standing on the land looking and going, wow, I've just lost my anchor. Should I go and get it? And my feeling in that dream was, I don't need it. I don't need that anchor. And it was interesting because in my dream there was my sister appears and she dives in to look for this anchor. But the dream doesn't go any further. It's like I was content to lose my anchor.
Mm.
And I think that's the thing. When I explore this for myself, like what does it mean to feel that I am really responding to life, the moment to moment experience of life. It's those moments when I'm actually saying, I am not anchored here. I'm not caught up with a way of being that I've become comfortable with. My
Mm-hmm.
anchor, my old comfort zones or my old way of being. It's like, showing up to life in a new way now. As we know, we're stepping into this new age. The old anchors no longer serve us. And the more we are willing to loosen our grip on that anchor. I guess in my dream, it's showing that I'm actually happy to fling it. So I've reached a point where I'm going, okay,
Throw it out
I'm
the door.
yeah. At least that's my interpretation of that dream. I don't know. That could be a completely different interpretation. I'm going with that because it makes me feel like I'm embracing life in a completely more freeing way, you know? And
Yeah.
I
Well,
yeah.
because if you have an anchor on, you don't move easily. Right? You can't move very far. I mean, that's the whole point. The anchor keeps you anchored.
That's right. And also, equally, we do want to feel anchored. We do want to have that sense of stability because that's very unnerving, especially in the times that we're in. I mean, we're watching how life is changing so radically that, here in New Zealand, we've had so many, in Auckland particularly, we've had so much rain and so many people have lost their homes as a result. The very foundation, the grounding has shifted. We've had slips and landslides, and it's very much what's happening internally as well. We're losing our own sense of what was grounding for a long time in our lives is now shifting. The ground is shifting. Yet, this is the thing. It's this if we want to embrace an adventurous, mysterious life in the moment, we also want to feel some sense of security, right? Because this this
Mm-hmm.
this paradox of living on the edge. It's the need for security and the need for freedom, and or that need for the curiosity, that space where we don't know what's ahead, and we want to welcome it. And that's the invitation, I guess, going back to what we said in the start. How do we come to a space where there's a balance here, where that old anchor isn't keeping us stuck in our need for stability and security, yet there is a way to let go somewhat of those old anchors to allow the unknown now to come in. I mean, it's so uncomfortable, right? I mean, as I say it, it's like, whoa, I'm suggesting that we be okay with not having that grounded sense of security. That's big. It's a big request, really.
Well, and I think it's interesting. I think um, like the anchor's a great analogy because there's a difference between an anchor, and I actually think it is still important to feel grounded, right? Because that's our connection within our bodies and to earth. And I think that aspect of groundedness is super important, and it's part of how we more easily move through those challenging times. But it's not letting our feet get stuck in the mud, right? Like we need to be grounded, but we need to not stay in, like feel like we're stuck in one place. Um, and so as like what's like I use breath a lot, right? Like, okay, breath brings me back into my body. Um, what what do you find is like one of the things that you use the most on this, trying to embrace living on the edge? Like we're talking about it as a concept, but how do you make it real? What's like one thing that helps you make it real?
Well, if it's a practice, a daily practice, then it would be, really, as you say, it's that anchoring in the body, right? We feel grounded in the body. So I always begin with really coming to feel that sense of stability and security in my body. That's all I need. And so I do this first with a morning yoga practice, and then whenever possible, I follow up with dance. So
Mm.
dance being that space to just allow the music to move me to a point where, the dance becomes me. It's like I become one with the movement. And and that sets me up really to be in the flow, because that feels like, okay, I'm in alignment with a flow here. How can I keep bringing that alignment into how I show up to today?
Yeah, I love that you bring it back to movement in the body. I have definitely discovered over the past um, couple of years with the intense energies in my own life, in the world, on these spiritual journeys that we're on, if we're not moving our bodies in some way that feels in alignment for each person, for you, you found yoga and dance, but it's really, it might be walking every day for somebody, or, getting to the gym or running or, Tai Chi or whatever that is. Because part of the way that we can allow and accept what's going on in our bodies is it's got to move. Like, we are energy. And when we don't move our bodies, it does get stuck and it does feel overwhelming. And you feel all the resistance, because when something on the edge that you get to now embrace
Mm.
as part of your energetic being, if you're not moving your energy systems in this incredible human form that we have, it's gonna be harder. Like, it's gonna be harder. So, I actually really love that you bring it back to actually moving the body.
Yeah, it is. The body tells us so much. There's so much information. In fact, our level of resistance to pushing our, like getting out there and doing some form of exercise, that very resistance is showing us that we're resisting something in life. It's real. And if we're able to bring awareness to that and actually go, okay, there's something that I'm resisting here. I'll give you an example. This morning, as I was waking up, I found myself just wanting to stay in bed. I noticed I just didn't want to get out, and although I was ready and awake, and I thought, this is interesting. And as I explored that, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm feeling some fear about this interview. This conversation. And I went, wow, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, I can feel it in my body now. I know that this is fear rising in me. And okay, now I'm going to call in support to help acknowledge this fear and to release it, to release it, to allow myself to step into a space of being held and guided in this unknown conversation, like, where might this go, and just and that was all it took for me to get out of bed. It was like bringing acknowledgement to that fear. And
Well,
I
and
want to share this other story as well, if
yeah,
that's all
please
right.
do.
This is more about it. And I've been reading a book. This is the second time I'm reading it. It's the most wonderful book. It's called goodness. It's called Anna, Grandmother of Jesus. Have you heard of it?
I haven't read that one, no.
Okay. So anyway, so in this book, this is the grandmother of Jesus, who of Yeshua, who's offering the story of Yeshua and Mother Mary. And anyway, in the story, there's this chapter where she describes Yeshua's initiation journey in India. So this is when he was still preparing himself for his, for the for the times ahead. And so he's on this initiatory journey in India with Mahavatar Babaji and his father, and they're traversing the Himalayas. They're
Mhm.
walking, they're going on this big hike. Speak about how important it is to move, right? Our body is so important, the vehicle that we're in. And so anyway, they're climbing up some really steep terrain. They're facing wild weather, gale force winds, and heavy snowstorms. But all along the way, the gale force winds would part as they approached, and the storms, the snowstorms would just dissipate as they arrived, and and it was an easeful journey, as much as it was an intense journey. It was easeful, and then they'd reached a point in this journey where they arrive at a cliff. And speaking about living in the edge, right? You reach a cliff, and you look over the cliff, and it's this daunting thought, like, what do I do now? How do I get to the other side? I can't even see the other side, which is what Yeshua was facing in this point. He was exhausted in his body, and he's looking at this this huge leap that they need to make, and he's thinking, I don't know if I can do this. And at that point, he himself, realizes that it is fear that is starting to settle in his body, and that fear feels heavy. But as he caught that fear, he brings his awareness back to that oneness, back to that connection to that unity, right? To Father, Mother, God, away from that suffering of that fear brings up, that fear of that experience of separation. And from that place of oneness, he could see through his mind's eye that he already had all the ability, the superpowers within him, which we all do, to help him face that cliff and get to the other side, which of course, which is of course what he did. So it's just, I just find that story so inspiring. We always will hit those fearful moments, right? When we come to those cliff edge moments. And yeah.
Well, and that's just coming back to this aspect of the living on the edge of change, right? Like it's the faster. I'm reminded of a saying that I used a lot when I uh, well, even with raising kids, or in corporate America, like sometimes it's like the faster you fail, the faster you learn, right? It's like when you're learning to walk, what happens? You fall hundreds of times. So in your own way, you're failing over and over and over. And the more you keep trying, the faster you learn. Same thing with riding a bike. And so we're really talking about this concept of, if there is failure or if there is uncomfort, it's like just being willing, in that curiosity and innocence of a child of learning to walk again. It's like, how do we more embrace every day in that moment, with whatever is presented, right? As a child, we weren't scared. We were investigating everything, right? You're trying to keep kids out of the cabinets and off the street. And somewhere we lose that as adults. And we lose that curiosity and that fun of life, of exploration of everything. And we let fear influence us. But just acknowledging it is, well, that's half the battle. Like, just being willing to name what is it you're afraid of, and then you can go, oh, well, okay, I don't have to be afraid of that. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So, if we come back to this aspect of living on the edge, and you mentioned the divine mother, and we talk about an aspect of divine feminine and the consciousness around divine feminine. How do those two things um, how do those two things connect? How do you look at those, or how do you use those together to move forward?
Well, see, this is the thing, right? So here we are on this journey to reclaim the feminine, to give voice and expression again, and as part of bringing balance to what has been out of balance for so long. And when we reclaim the feminine, we are reclaiming this aspect of an unknown expression. It's let's just call it intuition, right?
Mhm.
It's intuitive aspect within us, which is always which always knows, and if we trust this knowing, it is always going to take us to the next step. But it is an unknown next step. It's very moment to moment. We can't plan ahead like we used to, because we are really responding to the moment and where our intuition is guiding us. So as we reclaim the feminine, we are allowing ourselves, or supporting ourselves to actually live on the edge of change, as guided by the feminine's desire to guide us toward where we're meant to go, where she wants us to go and create. As you say, you want to create a lot, and it's this, the feminine within is wanting that. She wants to keep birthing new expressions, and it's that space of allowing that voice to be expressed in a way where we don't second guess, we don't, we don't bring in we will, the practical and the logical, and oh no, we can't do that because of this, or before we can even do that, you need to make sure you have all your ducks in a row, and oftentimes it's that way of being that can really stifle the expression of the feminine. And so really, when we embrace living on the edge, we are actually saying, okay, yes, I accept. I want to know where my feminine voice is leading me. I know this is uncomfortable, but I'm welcoming it to really guide me. Let that voice of that intuitive self guide me. But equally, and this is where I think, a lot of people who and maybe I would go as far to say, a lot of women fall in this trap where, maybe not, maybe this is my own generalization. But
Oh, I
um,
think it's probably true, right? Like this is an issue for humanity. This isn't a male or female thing.
That's
So
right, correct.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We need to have a strong masculine container to express this. Without that masculine container, the feminine voice is not given the vehicle to be expressed, to be seen. So this is where the dance between that, as I had said earlier, I said we throw the anchor out, but in reality, what we're doing is we're bringing in this new expression, a new relationship with the masculine container that can hold where the feminine is taking us, where the feminine wants to take us. So it's always a union. It's always a dance between the two. It's always in balance. And without that balance, then something gets lost along the way. Yeah, we face into the resistances. There isn't that ease of flow. We always get back to it. But yeah, does that make sense, Sheila?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's such an aspect of, when you talk about the divine feminine and the divine masculine and the container and, our ability to live on the edge and trust that aspect of the divine feminine that's within all of us. This isn't, this is a balance of men claiming an aspect of the divine feminine as well, right? But
That's
women
absolutely correct.
especially too.
Yes.
It's
Mm.
not, this isn't a male female human body experience. This is a balance of energies. And the energy that you're talking about claiming is, it's that inner strength, the divine feminine, the inner strength, an aspect of intuition, the listening to guidance. But we stand in our own power more. It's not a power over, right? It's a strength within. And that's that beauty of the divine feminine and the balance of the container that you're talking about. It has to be both, right? Like,
Yeah.
I spent my corporate career, in my early life in a technology field, which was very male dominated and masculine energy dominated.
Mhm.
um, because that's just an aspect of that, how technology had developed on the planet, right? Right, wrong, or indifferent, in corporate America and leadership. And but I was actually sharing in a class yesterday a recognition of where, even though I wouldn't have called it that um, when that, I was talking about being a computer programmer, and I
Mhm.
always loved actually working on other people's code. And most programmers don't like to work on other people's code because you have to figure out how that person was thinking, and you have to figure out
Yeah.
how they wrote what they did in order to try and fix it. And I actually always loved that. And I realized when I was speaking about it that that was a way I was using intuition and an aspect of the divine feminine to actually solve problems, because it
Wow.
was a connection into really the energy of that other person and how they wrote the code. And I loved being the person that would go look at everybody else's stuff and try to fix it like that, because I got to be creative in my own way, in that way, right? And you can be creative writing code, but it was a way that I think I was connecting with an aspect of intuition, and just that inner knowing, and listening to that, because that let me more quickly and easily, solve problems, right? Like, solving problems doesn't have to be a mental thing. It's not a masculine or a male thing, because I was using and listening to an aspect of knowing, right? An aspect of intuition that, I think was a way of the divine feminine, right? Trying to find its own expression, even many years ago.
That's so
Um,
beautiful. I love that. I love that story. It's such a it feels this, that you bring that presence into that code, and you can see the story, and you can see where the
yeah,
how this person's, oh, I love it. And that's that dance that happens, right? And as you
right.
say, the solutions come from that space of creativity. I mean, most people would say it comes when they're in the shower, you're standing,
The
yeah.
moment you least expect it, right?
That's right, yeah,
Yeah.
but it's that body of knowing that we're so quick to say no to, we're so quick to second guess, diminish, devalue, but, I think we're in that time now, and the more of us who are willing to allow that curiosity that our intuition is guiding us toward, that's when we can really, yeah, I think, enjoy life. This is the dawning of an age where we can let go of that suffering that we've been so accustomed to and start to enjoy.
Yeah, just just
Mm,
enjoy it. Absolutely. Have more fun.
yeah.
A little bit of that living on the edge is the little, it's almost, you had started out when you first described living on the edge, as it doesn't mean you have to, like, be jumping off a cliff or doing crazy wild things, but it is a bit of a radical concept to just be to just live in the unknown, right? Like, there is an aspect of that that is radical, because there's we've been in a culture of so much, um, defining how life should look. And
Absolutely.
so, um,
It's so
it's
interesting.
fun to play with that idea of, well, let's be radical, then not need to know how life needs to look.
Absolutely, and it is a radical idea. It really is, and I think we're ready for it, If there's anything at all that I can say about living on the edge, it is absolutely an invitation to not know. You cannot know the outcome. But, paradoxically, beyond a doubt that you must do it, you know?
Well, and that's the inner strength and
Yeah,
the trusting of the divine feminine, that you know yourself more, right? You don't try to be somebody else, but you trust that when you interpret the dream and the anchor, you're letting go. It doesn't matter what some book that somebody wrote 20 years ago about dream interpretation means. It matters that you get the message from it for you right now. That's what it is to listen to ourselves again. Um, and in this balance of, divine feminine and living on the edge.
beautiful. I love that. Listen to ourselves. That's really all we need to do. Yeah.
As we close out our conversation, although I have all kinds of like tangents I could continue chatting about, in
Mhm.
terms of how you support people
Mhm.
and what you're doing as an intuitive guide and healer, how are you working with people, and what do you want to share with people about what you do?
Well, a lot of what I do at the moment is really supporting and mentoring those who are facing these moments in their life. They're in this transition in moving from one role to another, not really knowing where they fit in anymore, where they belong, really curious to really questioning, who am I really? I've lost my voice over these years. I've lost my sense of self in the partnerships that I've been in. How can I reconnect with this knowing in me? Where does she want to lead me to? And so, this is where we have a lot of fun in my in one-to-one sessions. And I also offer workshops to really play with these themes. How do we actually um, practically live our lives when we are listening to our intuition? How does it show up as resistances, and how do we still flow with it? I'm actually offering a free online gathering at the next new moon. So we've got a new moon coming up this weekend. So the next new moon, this is in June, where I came up with the title "Losing Your Anchor." I'm not so sure whether that's
I love that. I wonder where that came from.
that's the thing, right? It's like that's the title that came up, and I'm going, but are people gonna get it? Are people gonna even are they gonna run when they see that title? But anyway, I'm playing with that title at the moment, and it's a space to come together and explore. How do we live with a curiosity when our sense of security and stability is being challenged, and how do we find that space where we can actually really um, trust and step into that space of stillness, as you said, in a Tai Chi class. How do we allow ourselves to come back to that stillness, so we know we are always supported, always there's always help coming to us all the time. Yeah.
Yes, all the time,
Mhm.
in all ways.
Always. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you, Deepa, for joining me today. It's been wonderful to talk about living on the edge of change and the divine feminine aspect of that. I really enjoy engaging in that conversation and that energy.
Thank you so much, Sheila. I really appreciate you inviting me, and I've had a lot of fun exploring this topic with you. So thank you.
You're
Mhm.
very welcome. You've just listened to the Spiritual Geek Podcast. Thank you for joining us. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to share a comment and rating on your favorite podcast platform. If you were inspired, consider sharing with friends and family. Love and light to each of you. May your day be filled with joy and wisdom as you consciously create your life.